Hey everyone, welcome back to Bros and Shows. I'm your host, Josiah, aka Mauler67, and with me, as always, you know I got my buddy, I got my pal, I got my brother Austin. Austin, how you doing today?
I'm doing not too bad.
Not too bad, not too bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's about as good as you can get, my man. Anything cool happened this weekend for you?
Just my wife had her cousins down and we all hung out and pretty much just did that whole thing where it's like a weekend of just a whole bunch of people around. So we except my buddy Mikey didn't make it because their dog had to have emergency surgery, so he had to stay behind. So kind of bummed about that, but I told him I'd come up and see him sometime soon, so he's all excited about that. But really nothing really else happened. We ended up going go-karting and putt-putting at Loudonville. Everyone wanted to do that, so I was like,
okay, like Mohican.
Yeah, Mohican Adventures. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that was pretty much my weekend. That and just sitting around watching TV and movies. That's what I did most of the time. Listen to music. Yeah.
For my weekend, I basically sat around. Me and John's been playing Final Fantasy Tactics again because I learned how to mod it, and so I modded in a update like patch that someone made that turns the game, like basically completely changes the game. And so I did that. Me and him been playing through that and just been playing every other night, just talking, discussing about the game itself and all the changes. And then on Saturday, me and Blake, we went out to a pizza place that he really likes called Giorgi's, back where he used to live, out in Latrobe, because he really wanted me to taste the pizza because they have a very unique pizza there. And how I described it is it appears that the crust has some form of sweetness or sugar in it, and it completely changes the taste of the pizza. And I expressed to him that I'm like, it's an interesting pizza. I don't see myself having this every month or something like that, because that's the thing, with me, I will occasionally just be like, I'm going to have a pizza, and then later that month be like, I'm going to have a pizza, because I've grown accustomed to the taste of a pizza, and that pizza very much does not taste like the normal pizza I would taste. It's very sweet. But I told him no, I'm glad that I tried it. I would have people try it just to see what they think of it. But we had that one, then we had a pierogi pizza, and I was very disappointed in the pierogi pizza because the pierogi pizza only has mashed potatoes, onions, and some cheese in it. And I was telling him the thing I like about pierogies is actually the taste of the noodles. And so I really thought they were going to have some form of noodles in it, whether it's chopped up noodles or something in there to give that kind of slight taste of noodles, but there was none of that. And just it just straight up tastes like mashed potatoes on a crust, and it was different. It was searing hot too. When I took my first bite, I didn't expect it to be all mashed potatoes. And when you put something hot in your mouth, your first initial instinct is oh, move it around my mouth, kind of keep it moving like that, right? It doesn't work with mashed potato. That coats the inside your mouth, and I panic grabbed my drink and as much as I could, just because it caked in my mouth. So where it was initially hot on one side, it became hot everywhere, and I just was oh my gosh. But
I think that's the same pizza place that Todd took me to one time, because he raved about this place, and it was pretty far out, where I think it was maybe a 20-minute, 30-minute drive from where he lives.
Okay.
And it had I've never had pierogies before, ever. And then he was like, well, man, you got to try a pierogi pizza. So I was like, okay, that's fine. And then we had it, and he was like, what'd you think? And I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, to me, I was like, this is a pierogi. I've never had one. It feels like I'm just eating mashed potatoes on a pizza. And he's like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, what is a pierogi? So I looked up what a pierogi is, and I was like, oh, okay. So mashed potatoes is the main thing. kind of like potato-y.
For like the basic one, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. And then I never tried a pierogi ever since. And then when I was out in Pittsburgh last time with you, when I was over at Seth, they had a fundraiser that like Aaron's, I think like niece or something had, and she had pierogies as the fundraiser. So they had like 3 different styles of pierogies, which was like a buffalo chicken pierogi, a was it strawberry banana pierogi, and there was like also a just a regular pierogi, and then a pizza pierogi. So I had all 4 of them, and they were all good. I was like, these are really, really good. But I don't know. The only problem I have with pierogies that I've heard, like most people, they're really soaking wet. Like they're kind of like, because you don't cook them. Yeah, they're not crunchy. They're like supposed to be like just like a noodle. So they boil them in water. I've seen like most people boil them in water, and then I've had them, and I'm like, man, if this was just crunchy to me, I think these would be great.
See, what's weird to me is that you had them crunchy, or that
really?
you had them like wet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like the pierogies that they serve at BNY, they boil them and everything, but then they also like sear them, like they cook them and sear them.
Oh,
and so they are crunchy.
They boiled them, yeah.
And I like that aspect of it. I very much like put it on the same level of like if you ever microwave a pizza roll, how it's like soft but it still has like some hardness to it. Like that's how I kind of viewed it, and that, I mean I like them, but I also haven't had a lot of different versions of pierogies. But no, I mean, hey Austin, that's the delicacy in Pittsburgh. Apparently, people in Pittsburgh will eat your ear out if they haven't had them.
Yep.
Burger had them boiled too. Yeah, that's probably how they're cooked. Just whether or not they're seared on the end or cooked additionally changes them. But Austin, talking about boiling some things and cooking some things, Austin, this week we watched House of the Dragon season 2 on HBO. Austin, what did you think of House of the Dragon season 2?
Man. So here's the thing. I want to bring this up. I was very upset with how original Game of Thrones ended. You know, it's like one of the worst endings in my opinion, and it was rushed, very rushed, and I think it would have worked out fine if they would have took their time. With that being said, when season 1 of House of Dragon came out, I started having faith into being like, hey, this might be a really good show, because 1, all of these books are already done, so we kind of know the outcomes, so they don't have to guess really, and have like the Hollywood dialogue, because you can tell the difference between like, hey, they know the story and they can film it really well, and then it's like, oh, they know parts of the story, but they have to fill in all this other stuff. You could tell when the seasons were like later. With that being said, season 2 to me was a huge teaser trailer for season 3. That's how I felt like the season was, because there was only like it was like a little bit of a battle, like episode 4, where it was, you know, we got to see, you know, some dragon fighting, and then the king gets burnt. That's the only real thing that like I thought was the episode that was like entertaining enough to be like, oh, this is okay, it's picking up a little bit, and then it didn't pick up anymore. I just felt like this season was just a trailer. It like people just getting allies. It was more of like a political season about like, hey, we're gonna do our stronghold, and there was nothing there that paid off at all, because even the ending of the show of this season, I was like, this was lackluster. So
the first thing I do want to talk about a little bit is why you have that feeling is because of Warner Brothers. Like apparently right before they were about to start filming, they got told they had to drop from 10 episodes to 8 episodes. And they like rushed to like condense it down, and then they lost a bunch of funding and all that stuff, and so they essentially like that you say like it's a trailer for next season. It was a trailer for the end of the season. Like it was supposed to end on the big battle of the Gauntlet and maybe like some additional stuff, but because of the funding cutting and everything, it got turned into essentially a trailer. Like the one thing I will say is that I had no issue watching the show really at all. Like I felt like there was still like movements of characters. The only plot line that I personally was kind of like upset with was Damon. Just being at Harrenhal the whole time, tripping balls, as everyone said.
Yeah.
It was still like nice of them to like have that, but they didn't need to incorporate the whole story of like, oh, Damon wants the throne, like he still wants the throne and he's going to take it from Rhaenyra, like he's going to become the king and she's just going to become another queen. They didn't really need to do that. Like they could have just had him be like the faithful king consort that he was kind of like portrayed to be up to that point. Like they didn't need to have like all like magic-y werewood three-eyed raven stuff onto him to make him be like, oh, I shouldn't take her throne, right? I actually rolled my eyes at the visions that he got at the end of the season. Just because, like, you know, like those visions would be cool if Game of Thrones didn't end and they were like midway through the seasons and you got those visions of like Daenerys and like the White Walkers and the Three-Eyed Raven and all that stuff. It would be cool if you realized that, oh, Daenerys did not do anything. Like, she literally is the reason why the Night King came across down to Westeros, because she took a dragon north. And then that just spirals you into the frustration of the Game of Thrones series, with everything being like, oh, what was the Night King's original plan? Like, why was Bran on the throne? Like, it spirals you down. And so I'm like, I don't know why they're very much still trying to like hype the world as if like, ooh, like the story of Game of Thrones is like the ending of all these different series. And I'm just over here just being like, you can't do it whenever the ending of all these series that you made is the worst ending because you never set anything up. And I always rant about that to people, where I'm like, if they explained, like if they had better understanding of the pathway to things, they 100% would, like, Game of Thrones would be like, everything would be a lot cooler, like having like the visions of Daenerys and all that stuff if they ended the stuff functionally and cool. But they didn't. They Game of Thrones is Game of Thrones, and it was ended poorly. And anytime you try like referencing that as being like, oh, visions of the future, people only remembers the bad of that. So that, I don't think that's a smart decision of them to try doing with Daemon. Like even the mentioning of like the Princess Promise kind of makes people be like, oh yeah, that didn't mean anything. That wasn't a thing. And like I'm sure that they'll try within like the universe of each show that they do to either retcon or like justify things. And I think the only biggest justification that they can make is explaining why Bran deserves to be on the throne because he's the Three-Eyed Raven and not because he's Bran anymore. But that's going to come with time, and people aren't going to be receptive of that because of how badly it was done in Game of Thrones. So who cares? Anyways, going back to House of the Dragon, because that's the key thing. That was the one thing that I was really frustrated with them like doing, was having him kind of like sit there the whole time. The battle where Meleys dies was kind of hard to watch for me because I knew what was going to happen. Yeah. I liked the character, I liked the dragon. And it was even more frustrating whenever she like turned back twice to like go back in there. And I'm kind of like, what's the point of it? Like, oh, you don't save the castle from being taken, but you keep a dragon, which is worth more than like 10,000 units, right? Why? Because you want loyalty? People would understand the concept of, hey, this is a bad situation to be in. Back off. You got 2v1 by Vhagar. Like, what are you doing? Like, the story of that didn't make sense because, like, in the books, it's supposed to be like they jumped her essentially while she was there. And that's why she couldn't leave, is because she got jumped. And here it was very much of she came, she killed the king's dragon, got pretty beat up, and she was leaving, and then she turned back. Like it kind of takes away that feel, you know. But yeah, no, I just I enjoyed like the fights that the single fight they had the dragon, because dragons are very expensive. I liked how they introduced the dragon seeds. I liked a lot of the dragon seeds. I'm interested to see if they do Hugh the Hammer and Ulfric the way they do in the book, because it does not seem like they're going to. I could be wrong, because like Hugh the Hammer is the one who controls what the freak is his name? The bronze dragon that's in the pit. And then Ulf is the one who trains the Silverwing, the one who flies over King Landing like an idiot. And Ulfric very much reminds me of what he is in the book. Like Ulf, he's kind of a piece of trash person. Hugh the Hammer is also a piece of trash person in the books, but in this one he seems to be much more like honorable. And so I'm wondering if they're going to do what they did in the books with them too, and if they do, how do they change his character so much to do it? Yeah, it's a whole thing. Like I don't know. They're changing small little things of the show, of the book and the show. Like they don't have apparently what's her face in the Vale is going to get Sheep Stealer, which is supposed to be Nettle's one, which is supposed to be the person that Daemon apparently has relationships with and causes strain between him and Rhaenyra. Don't know if they're going to do that at all, or if it's going to be like something else. I don't know. We're kind of like in an open-ended like bookend. Like they're changing enough of little things to make it like not the same as the books, but I don't know if it's for the good or not. What do you think? I've been kind of spinning here for a bit.
Well, you know, I don't know. I really feel like this is kind of like the biggest problem. I agree. Is his whole season was just like him tripping balls and having these visions, and like some of those visions that he did have, I was okay with. Like a couple of things. Like one, he visions his death really in a way, because like they show the part where the dragon's like bleeding and it's on the ground and stuff. So it kind of like in this battle scene. The problem I did have on those vision scenes was the White Walker. That looked pretty bad to me. I just didn't like the look of the White Walker that they showed. It kind of looked like, well, the Night King. It was the Night King actually, and it looked goofy. Like to me, it looked really bad CGI. Like it was botched. They were just getting the end of the season. They're like, you know what? Let's wrap this up. We've done the dragons, all that CGI. Let's just
I didn't really find that White Walker bad.
Oh man, like it's like, pretty bad.
I think it's only bad if you freeze frame, and the only reason why it's bad when you freeze frame is because they're doing the blur effect on it, and like people have been posting pictures of it being like, look how bad the CG is. I'm like, it's blurred. It's not because it's bad, it's because it's blurred, because it's a quick transition up to them and then cut, and you're taking a single frame of a blurred image and saying like it's all bad because it's all blurry. I'm like, I don't think it's actually that bad. I think the blur makes it look worse than it is.
Well, then, like, after that scene, I've seen, like, a lot of Reddit posts. After I watched this show, I saw a lot of Reddit posts where people are thinking Daemon is the Night King. Which I said, I don't know if that, it just doesn't make sense to me.
No, that doesn't.
But
I've seen a lot of people talking about, like, what will happen to him and that he'll become, like, something more or something else, and I'm just like, I don't want that. I want him to just like his story to conclude the way that it concludes, and that's that. Like they don't need to keep incorporating characters to be like part of the ending of a show that no one liked. Like they don't need to do that. They have a character already in that way with Three-Eyed Raven, and they teased him this season, and he's going to become prominent in the Knights of the Seven Kingdoms, right? He's going to be a character in that show. I also find it funny, like people are like, oh, it wasn't confirmed that the Three-Eyed Raven or the Three-Eyed Crow was Damon Rivers. I'm like, it was basically screamed in your face in the books. Yep. The only people who didn't think it was like confirmed were the ones who didn't like read into stuff or like acknowledge information that was given. I'm like, whatever, it's fine. Like,
yeah, no, and I feel like, you know, I don't know. I just felt like the season just didn't have what season 1 had a lot. I did feel like Damien was like very distant in this whole season.
Yeah, he was basically in his own little like world.
Yeah, it kind of felt like to me, like when they did that move, it kind of felt like they were trying to save money on like the production that was going on. They didn't want like too many people and like together. Also too is I feel like it's just the only thing that I was okay with and like I was interested in was all the other houses finally coming out. Like, you know, we had like the Tullys, like he talked about that,
and Grover.
The Grovers, or the Grove or whatever it is.
No, Grover Tully. That was the grandfather
Tully,
who dies and then it transfers. Which
because
I was
Damien's like, hey,
like
you did
now
your
you're
job.
now you're
it's
king
like,
or whatever.
No, I didn't do that. Don't allude to that. I murdered him.
No, he didn't say that at all. No, the thing I explained to Jordan at work is I'm like, there's a point in the Tully history that Gur Martin just decided, screw it, I'm going to name every character off of Muppets characters. And so he has like Grover Tully, he has Kermit Tully. Like, if you ever look, if you ever want to see like funny names, look up Tully, like Game of Thrones Tully family tree, and you'll see like Grover Tully, Kermit Tully. I think it's like Bert and Ernie as well. Like it's like blatant, like, wow, dude, you just ran out of names, and you're just like, I like Sesame Street.
I like the Muppets.
I like the Muppets too.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this season at all. I really felt like it was a little, I don't know. And there was some parts in this season where I kind of like cringed a little bit. But there was some parts where I actually cringed and like going like this, like, ooh. Especially the parts where like they were taking the armor off of the king when he was seared to flesh. Like that sound they used, I was like, oh gosh.
I was a little upset with that scene. You know why? It's a very small thing, but in the books they proclaim that the dragon fire like melted the armor into him.
Yeah,
like they couldn't remove the armor because if they did, it would like pull off vital organs, and they didn't want to do that. And so I was like, man, that sucks. I thought that would be a really cool like scene. They instead like kind of like threw away like, oh, it was Valerian armor, so like it didn't get burned the same way. And I'm like, that's stupid. Like, come on, man, just give us the cool burned like king in armor who can't like move. They're at least doing the whole like Aegon's burned and can't do much, and he's now been escorted away, setting up for everything to kind of go down the way it goes down in the books. So I think they're not going to deviate too far. I'm just so here's my question for you, Austin. With how this season ended, and we know we're going to get 4 seasons of it, do you think the end of the war is going to happen by the end of season 3, and season 4 is going to be the like epilogue episodes of the like long I think it's called like the Night of the Wolf or whatever? Or do you think it's going to be they're going to stretch it out for season 3, half of season 4, and then season 4, half of the season is going to be like the epilogue of the things? Because some of the stuff happened in House of the Dragon or like the Dance of the Dragon that it doesn't really get resolved within like the time frame that they have set up currently. They would have to time skip to solve some of the stuff.
Which they've done before. They did last season where they time skipped.
Yeah.
Like a huge bit. I remember because like when I started rewatching this show, I forgot about the time skip, and I was like, wait, did they get like a new actress to like play her? And then I was like, oh wait a minute. Oh, and
Like,
then I was
oh,
like, oh
yeah.
no, there was a time skip. I forgot.
And she was a child, and then she
She
appears
was-
in this season. And
Yeah.
when her and the king appears, I'm like, hey, they got him back in there because he did a really good job last season. And people
Yeah.
liked him.
Yep.
That's what they
so-
do. If you do
Uh,
good, they'll make it go again.
So what I do hope for is that it drags from season 3 to season 4. I'm okay with that. I really would think that would be the ticket there.
Okay.
But it's Warner Brothers, and I feel like you might have lost some people here this season. I feel like that. That's why, because it was so weird that they stated like after, I think it was like the season finale,
Mhm.
they announced, hey, it's going to end 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And I was like, that to me, not just being like a storytelling aspect, it's a budget aspect. And they're like, hey, we didn't make the money that we wanted.
I disagree on that.
I don't know.
Because here's the thing: when I watched the first season of House of Dragon, I remember telling either you or like Jordan, I'm like, House of Dragon should be 3 seasons and that's it. With the pace that they set up in the first season, the second season will be the war, third season will be the end of the war. And then when they said 4 seasons, I'm like, oh, they're stretching this. That's actually what I said. I'm like, oh, they're stretching this. Because I don't think, because here's the thing, Austin. What's left, like, without spoiling, the next thing is the big battle that we're talking about, the capturing of the one location,
Yep.
everything that happens in that location,
Mhm.
the certain people dying, and then they fleeing, and then the end of the war is because they like fleed and they get captured, and that's the end of it.
Hmm.
That's the end of it. That can be done in a single season. Like, because you would have the big battle on like episode 3, you would have the second big conflict of like the capture and everything on episode like 6, and then they flee and get captured and killed on episode 8, like or episode 8, the end of the season. And when they said like, no, we're going to have 4 seasons, I'm like, either they're going to stretch out that roughly, and it's going to be rough because we're going to feel it stretched, because people are going to just kind of like lackadaisically like talk around or hang out or whatever, or they're going to have a whole season devoted to the Night of the Wolf, which, to be fair, would be pretty baller because that's actually a really interesting time and a lot of cool things happen during that area.
Yeah.
So, no,
I
I
don't know.
personally feel like it's getting stretched.
I don't know. And that's the problem. Like, Warner Brothers didn't stretch out the ending of Game of Thrones. That should have been stretched. Like, it should have went.
Well, did
maybe
Warner
another
Brothers
2
have
seasons.
control of HBO by that point?
Yeah,
Okay,
Warner
I
Brothers
wasn't
had
sure.
control after season 5.
Yeah,
Season 5 is when Warner Brothers took over.
as I've heard, they're having like very bad financial issues, and they just started nerking everything that they have control
they
to like save money.
Yeah, they started nerking a whole bunch of stuff, but also too is they started bundling with other streaming platforms. Like they took Discover on, like, well, they bought Discovery Plus out, but also too is like now they're doing bundles because I think Netflix and Apple TV are like getting together. So now it's
interesting.
going to be like Hulu and HBO Max. You can do that with Disney Plus involved. They're doing packages. It's back to cable, guys. But no, so I will say this. I don't know. Some people that I talk to, most people that I have heard from that haven't read the books, those are the people you want to stay to watch that show. Most people that got into Game of Thrones never read the books. They just started watching. They're like, wow, this is really good. And then it turned into people loving the book. Like they'll go out and buy the books and they'll read them. That's what happened to me. The only reason I ever started watching Game of Thrones was I remember hearing about it. I watched my buddy Andrew and Seth would watch it all the time, but I hated it because of Joffrey. And then Joffrey dies. And I was like, all right, I'm interested. This guy died a horrible death, and I'm here for it because he deserved it. So what's going on? And that's when I got into the thing of, hey, I really like the show. And I started reading the books. And then I was like, okay, this is good. So, you know, you have to keep those viewers. And I feel like this season did not keep those viewers. I think that if they would have done the battle and HBO would have put forward that money and did that, I think you would have got it so hyped people would be excited.
For sure. It would have done a lot better just because of that, like, last 2 episodes. I no lie there, Austin. I think you're 100% correct.
Yeah. And I feel like I do feel that there is a battle that's about to come up that I love, and I remember the name of the battle, but I'm not going to say anything because it kind of spoils what it is. It's just, or what they call it. I'm super stoked, but I was not impressed by this season at all. I just felt that it was just a lackluster of, you know, just people forming alliances. I get that, but with no ending that's going to keep you hyped, it feels like to me that you're like, you know, and that's what you liked about Game of Thrones, the original one, was the ending 2 episodes were like, whoa, oh man, you know, like one of the best endings to any season, in my opinion, is when Jon Snow gets stabbed and then it just leaves it off. That's what Game of Thrones was. Like, it felt like, man, what's going to happen? Is he dead? Is he alive? Why did they stab him? You know, and it's like, you know, you just had to wait. And then when it happened, that's when, like, I feel like that's when the season started getting a little iffy on that. But we all, you know, because there's so many, why people liked Game of Thrones to begin with was this speculation, these theories that they had of like what would happen. And I feel like with a prequel series, you can't do that. You can't hide behind that. You can't be like, oh, what's going to happen next? Because people already know. But you can change some things to the story aspect. I get that.
To be fair, this isn't technically a prequel series in the same manner.
Yeah.
And this is also a special situation where the books that were created for this is done from a perspective of the Maesters and like secondhand collaborations of stuff.
So it means that like the story can be manipulated at any time.
At any point in time. Yeah. The issue is, right? The telling of the books of like the House of the Dragon or the Dance of the Dragons, the interesting and fun part of that retelling is the conflicting narratives in it. While in your show you don't get that, you don't have that possibility of conflictive narratives, and for that reason they have to either go like midpoint on all narratives or go hard into one side narrative and not like change things. But I think the whole like, oh, you have to have like, you with a prequel you can't really change. This series is taking place so far in the past from Game of Thrones that anything that happens here will not have direct effects on Game of Thrones unless they make it something stupid like, oh, Daemon becomes the Three-Eyed Raven. Oh, like then it becomes like that becomes But yeah,
never know. I just feel like that you're going to oust the viewer that is there that probably doesn't want to read the books, because there's a lot of people that aren't really like, you know, some people. I get it. Like a lot of people, I remember very well with American Gods. When American Gods came out, you know, a lot of people never read that book. They just watched the show and they never went around to end up reading the rest of the show, reading the rest of the books because of how bad it was after season 1. But the thing is like, I think that you need to leave your hype, like the hype that needs to be there, because season 1 had a good hype. I just feel like season 2 took too long to come out to keep on that hype.
2 years is too long for like TV shows to keep hype.
It is,
because like,
unless you have a huge, because Game of Thrones, like the original series, I remember people being so hyped for that.
Yeah, but they didn't have 2 years.
Yeah.
Of like, hold on, let me look up how long.
I think it was 2 years, but you also have to realize is you have all these phenomenons and these fans and all these people that are like into this show. Like it was the most pirated show ever, all time. And what happens is when a show does it and a lot of people disagree with the ending, you lose a lot of the hype that could ever happen for any other show because they don't trust it. So when that happens, like take for example, Breaking Bad having a good ending, having a stable thing, and like people were into it, like they were huge into it. And then when Better Call Saul came out, that had the hype for it. And it still had the hype through the whole thing, and it was still a really good show.
So Austin, for Game of Thrones, season 1 aired 2011, season 2 aired 2012, season 3 2013, season 14 2014, season 5 2015, 16, 17. It's all up until 2018, where they do two years. For 2007 to 2018, 2019 is when the season 8 came out. For 6 episodes, they took 2 years for is hilarious.
And they left a water bottle and they left a coffee
mug. They did some poor stuff.
It was awful. It was awful.
I personally believe that if you're trying to make hype for a TV show, you have to release it early. After a year, people kind of like forget inside of it. And it's also funny that like they got hit with budgetary reasons, and it's like, yeah, you picked like the worst series to make with budgets. Yeah. But to be fair, up to this point, they've never had that issue of being like shot with budget issues. Like you could look at season 7, 8, but that wasn't actually Game of Thrones being hit with budgetary issues. That was the creators, Dan and Dave, not wanting to make Game of Thrones anymore and wanting to move on to stuff, and so they were trying to cut down their time by reducing things.
Oh man, they're really missing out on that.
Yeah,
they could have done something great.
Well, they did all that stuff, and now like they're blacklisted essentially. Like I don't think they're getting anything else in there.
No.
If they are, they're getting like the B-rated things that people will be like, "Who's this guy's name?" Oh, well, at least they were an A-lister at one point. But no, I think I agree with you. I think too long time to come out. It needs to come out every year. I think them doing the whole like House of Dragons, 7 Kingdoms, House of Dragons, 7 Kingdoms, I think that'll be interesting. We'll see how it plays out. I'm more interested in the 7 Kingdoms because it's much more like grounded, like almost detective-like style, like a buddy cop is how I describe it. Because it's very much a like Duncan and Egg are 2 buddy cops, and they're going about trying to do good, and they keep getting into crap, and they have to solve what's going down. And I really enjoyed the books for that.
There is one thing that I will gripe about. I will really gripe about, and that is the first episode of the season had one of the best parts in the book that I remember being shocked about. And they butchered it. Like I'm gonna say they butchered it on the show.
Yeah, they treated that story arc very much like that child, man.
Oh man, of course you had to do something. But
because it's true, right? Like the one thing I told Jordan, right, my friend, like he used to be on a show. We used to do the nerd Nerds Watch with him. I told him, I'm like, it's crazy to me that they are trying so hard to make Rhaenyra like the good guy, because like, and like in the story of what you hear Daemon tell Rhaenyra a son for a son, and Rhaenyra essentially agrees to it. But in this one, they try to like make it like she didn't agree to it, like she didn't know what he was doing. Also, they weren't aiming for the kid to begin with. They were actually aiming for like Aemon, but they couldn't find him, so they just killed whoever. And I'm like, that was a dumb take. And then the biggest thing I wanted, they could done all that the same. The only thing I wanted was the interaction between Blood and Cheese and the kids. Like, I didn't want the whole like SA stuff that happened as well, or the threat of it. I wanted the Blood and Cheese to hold the 2 kids and ask her like, which one do we kill? And then she names the youngest one because the other one's the older one. And then they lean down to the younger one. It's like, did you hear that, little kid? Your mother wants you killed. And then they killed the older one. Like, that's what I wanted for that scene, because like it's such a trauma-filled thing for that kid to have. And like that would be just traumatic regardless who it is, like both the kid and Helena. But they didn't do it, and I felt like they missed the opportunity. And I think that would have been a great shocker for the season, where I think it was a little like it wasn't. You know, the shock wasn't as big of a shock when people were more upset that the dog got kicked than a kid getting like beheaded. Like, they failed on their shocker when, like, I was even upset. Like, when the dog got kicked, I had visceral reaction. I was like, dude, son of a gun. But then when, like, the kid, all that stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, oh, they cut away, you hear, like, gushing noises, get it, whatever. But, like, they could have done that in such a way to make you, like, repulsed. But they didn't. I felt like they failed on that. Oh, man. But at least they're doing good on the big battles with the dragons, though. Like, I did like the battle this season with the dragon. I thought it was fun and interesting. I liked how, like, it was, like, hardcore Warzone massive. And the next one's going to be just as bad, if not worse. And it's going to have, like, big emotional hits.
Yeah.
And it's going to just keep going. Like, the emotional hits are going to keep going. And I'm excited to see what they do. 2 years... I'm going to forget about it until, like, if we do the podcast in 2 years, we look at each other and be like, oh yeah, House of Dragon 3 came out. Oh yeah, I guess we'll do that. Like we do on shows that we forget about after so long, you know?
Well, that I did like Aemon this season.
Oh yeah, dude, Little Monk was doing great, dude. He did a great job this season.
He even showed his sword.
The funny thing is that he never, like, I think in the books he's never gotten into like sword combat. He was always dragon riding, which I mean, to be fair, you have the biggest dragon in the world. That's your combat. You're not going to ever be caught without it, and I agree with that.
They did great on the CGI of that dragon because I feel like that dragon was.
He has heft.
Yeah, it's massive.
It has heft, dude.
Yeah, it's filmed really well with that. I will say that.
Every time it like takes a beat, you can tell like one beat of the wing propels it, but like everything is just like, oh. It's me getting out of bed in the morning. It's just like, oh.
It's when I eat too much spicy pepperoni. Dracarys.
Dracarys. Acid reflux comes out.
Yeah, no. But you know, I'm you know, we'll see. I'm actually really hyped for season 3 because you know one of my favorite battles is coming up. Next to you know, I don't know how long.
It's the battle. It's the battle. This upcoming battle, and then like the little battle like after, like there's a couple like big twists in like the after parts, but this is like the big one that like sets everything on its course. And I don't think that after the big battle's done, they have a lot longer for the series.
Yeah.
It's just it's going to be weird whenever like. Never mind. I'm not going to say anything else because that may spoil.
Also too is like you know, HBO did announce like during this season that they're coming out with another series called like The Watchmen or the Night Watch or something like that. It's like based off of the Kingsguard actually. So we'll see how that is. I think that's just I don't get it. Like I was just like, huh? Well, because they canceled already. After Game of Thrones ended, they canceled the Night King show that they were gonna do.
Well, they were going to do the Jon Snow show,
they were doing the Snow show too.
But Kate Herring came out and explained why that got canned, because they kept trying to rework the show, and they kept hating the rework, and they're like, we can't find a story to tell with Jon Snow after Game of Thrones, and it's like, yeah, because there is no story to tell on him. Like, he's not the person who continues the story. Honestly, of all the characters who were revealed in the Game of Thrones at the end, it's most likely Arya's the only one with a genuine story that could be told. Hi, Molly.
Okay, so the name of the show is called A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, that's the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms that I was talking about. Duncan and Egg.
Yeah. Duncan and Egg. Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm excited for. That's like, because that is a much more grounded story. And I like those style of stories.
Then Aegon's Conquest is another show that's in the works. Like they've been talking about.
They've been talking about it, but they've been talking about it for years. And that's going to be a show, depending on how well House of Dragon ends or does, they may scrap, because that's going to be another massive CGI drain on the company. Because they'll only have 3 dragons, but there'll be big dragons, and they'll be in every single episode because Aegon's never seen without his dragon.
Yep. And then they also talked about there was in development still, I think, because they announced it too, was the Sea Snake and the Nine Voyages. They were going to do a small show of that. It was a prequel show. And then 10,000 ships, and then
my personal opinion on a lot of those stories, right? I don't want a series based upon each of those individual stories. I would very much like a anthology series called like the Tales of Westeros or whatever, and each like season is based upon one of those stories, and they just keep releasing, because like the 10,000 ship thing, like that's a story that you can tell in a season, be fine with it.
You know, one of my favorite things that I would love to see them do is Robert's Rebellion. I would love to see that.
I completely agree with that too, but that doesn't have to be a whole series.
No,
that can just be a season. That could be part of the like stories of Westeros.
I think what they could probably do with Robert's Rebellion is just do a 2-part movie. I think that would be so much easier. It'd be better, and then you could just have it as like a.
No, I don't want a movie on that. I would prefer just a single season, because like there are like small little like, oh, this happens or this happens and this gets intrigued. Like the stories of Westeros, I would very much love like small little like one-off episodes or season-off episodes. Because like there's some great stories that are told like as just snippets, like when Boris Baratheon takes Storm Landing or Storm's End, like that's a great story.
Yeah.
That would probably be added into the Aegon's Conquest one. The whole Eerie Reach and the First Men, like that's a really interesting, funny story, because you hear the concept of the original like griffins of it. You know, you can have the tale of Old Valyria, you can have the tale of the Asshai, all that stuff, all these little things that are, you don't have the time and effort. Now, I do remember that they said somewhere about possibly doing an animation show at some point. I don't know if that's true or if they're going to even move on with that, but I would be okay. That would be perfect for the stories of Westeros.
Yeah.
Because they don't need to divulge all this effort and money into things if they just do like small little things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, those are all my thought processes, at least. Do you have anything you want to say, Austin, or more?
No, I think I'm pretty good on this.
Yeah, we kind of talked through it a lot, talked through different aspects. That's all good. That's solid. All right, Austin, I think that basically does it on this episode of Bros and Shows of House of the Dragon Season 2. It was good. It was fine. You didn't like it as much. I liked it a little more than you, but not as much as last season, and that's knowledgeable. Next week, Austin, we get to watch a show that I have heard nothing but bad things about.
Same here.
I'm a little worried. So we'll get to have a long conversation about Umbrella Academy Season 4 next week.
And what's worse is you like the show, and I am not a fan of the show at all.
I liked the first season, maybe like the first 2 seasons, 3, like I liked the characters to a degree.
Well, one of the people that we had on the podcast before, he has watched it, and he told me to tell you that he was disappointed. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
We'll see. And crazy thing, like, I know that House of the Dragon was affected by the writer's strike. This show was 100% affected by the writer's strike.
Oh yeah.
And so going into it, knowing that it's only 6 episodes, I'm just prepared for like a train wreck of 6 hours, and then I can just wipe my hands of it and just be like, and if I ever show someone this show, it will only be the first season. Like, that will just be what it is. All right. Well, Austin, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. And thank you all so much for stopping by, and thank you all so much for tuning in.